I'd like to call the City of Marine City Commission meeting to order. Marine City Fire Hall, Thursday, December 6th, 7 p.m. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And could we please take a brief moment of silence for our dearly departed? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Vanderbosch.
Here.
Commissioner Bryson.
Here.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Here.
Commissioner Callahan.
Here.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Commissioner Buchanan is absent this evening. City Manager Levitt.
Here.
I'll make a motion to excuse Commissioner Verkaman.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to communications. We have the DEQ 2018 Water System Sanitary Survey, the Tifa Board Minutes, October 16th, the electric service for 300 Broadway, and Gels Paving letter.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Communications.
Presented.
Communications.
Communications, sorry.
And can I get support?
Support.
Motion, support. Any questions on the communications? Lisa?
Sorry. Is this report on the water gonna come back around? Are we gonna discuss this any further? I kinda don't like to see it on here. This one here kinda scared me, and I think this is something we ought to be really looking
Yeah,
at more.
this is an agenda item in the future if you'd like to discuss it.
Yes, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Find out what's going on and why this
Yep.
happened.
And see if Mike can look at and some of the reasons for deficiencies and.
Yeah, we did have Mike do the response letter, so that's all been communicated to the state already. At the
Looks
next meeting or at least one of the future meetings, we can see if Mike and Tetra Tech can attend as well
Perfect.
and address
Cool.
any concerns you might have, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
second thing. Next one.
Yep.
On the Tifa minutes, could they put the first names, because sometimes we have husbands and wives, and you don't know who's who on, like on this board, it just has the last name.
You're talking about for when, very beginning and present?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, the next one. I see we're dealing with the electric. What about the other services?
There are no other services at the building right now,
Eventually, you're gonna have water, sewer, gas.
and they will have to get it separate.
Okay, all right. Last but not least,
Uh-huh.
this is the one that I had gotten the call on for 220 West. Can you also add 320 West Boulevard?
I already spoke to them about that,
Okay.
and when they come out in the spring, they'll take a look at it and see
Both
what
of
needs to
them?
be taken care
Because
of.
it's, each block has one right in the middle.
Yeah, he noted in his letter about both of the streets, so they'll come out and look at both of them.
Alrighty, thanks, that's it.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns on communication?
Sure.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Move on to public comment. Anyone in attendance is welcome to address the city commission. Please state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
I just have a couple things to announce. For those of you watching this on TV, this will already be passed, but we're having a Old Newsboy fundraiser at GARS from 11 to 4:30, and there's also a fundraiser in the evening at Hell's Our Home, and that begins at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock, okay, sorry, 6 o'clock. And both these organizations help us a lot. It's the alumni that will be working up at the GARS Bar, and Hell's Our Homes has done a lot for us, brought us lots of toys. They always give us some cash, and we're very pleased that they support us so well. Also, for everybody that's going, will see this on TV, There'll be a pizza party. The tickets are $10. It starts at 5:30 at Anita's Place on Wednesday, the 15th, and there's going to be some nice raffle items that you can buy raffle tickets for. They're already started to become displayed there, and that's pretty much our last fundraiser. All weekend long, there'll be, or I shouldn't say all weekends, Friday and Saturday, the old newsboys will be out selling the papers. So we need all the help we can get, and anybody that wants to come on the next two Sundays to shop at 7 o'clock. We always need people to shop. So quicker we get done when everybody shops together, then we can get out of there. And it's a nice list, and it's easy to shop for kids. They do a good job telling you what color they want and the sizes, and it's actually a lot of fun. So that's all I have to come here to say, and just thank you very much for supporting the old newsboys.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
Heather Warner, 345 North Elizabeth. I'm here to speak about recreational marijuana. I'm asking that you discuss it and then table it until the state requires us to decide. I know that Elginak, St. Clair, and Clay Township have already gotten on the no bandwagon. My thought is, why decide now if we are not yet required to? I would hate to see us lose out on an opportunity to capture additional tax dollars for Marine City. Unfortunately, the road millage was voted down, so there was no extra money to fix the roads. The Tifa right fighters also ruined an opportunity to get extra money into our general fund. I do not smoke marijuana, and I don't plan to start just because it's legal starting today. Heck, I don't even drink. I don't necessarily want to see a dispensary in our town, but there are more options other than retail sales to reap the tax benefits from legalized marijuana in Michigan. The list is as follows: marijuana retailer, marijuana safety compliance facility, marijuana secure transporter, marijuana processor, marijuana micro business, class A, B, or C marijuana grower. As you can see, it's not all about retail sales. Maybe no one even wants to bring their marijuana-related business to our town, but why shut the door on them now when we don't even know how any of this is going to work? We are over a year out before retail sales even become a reality in this state. I could be wrong, but I don't even think the state has everything figured out. I know Elaine has gone to several seminars regarding this issue and probably has a lot of information to offer us. What I do know is there will be strict laws, regulations, and fees on licenses to be in this business. I am sure the state will make it almost impossible for the little guy to start a business unless they have lots of money. I do know we have some vacant commercial warehouses in town, and maybe someday we will be able to put them to good use. In conclusion on this matter, I'm asking that we don't make any decisions tonight until we are better informed by the state how everything is going to work. Tifa. I want to keep this positive, so I won't get into my thoughts and feelings on this issue. But my question is, why are the meetings held at 4 o'clock in the afternoon while most people at work? I wish you would consider moving these meetings to a 7 p.m. time that would give the residents more opportunity to attend and actually see what's happening in these meetings. And lastly, Mr. Davis, I just want to let you know that you have my utmost respect for the calmness and professionalism that you show at these meetings. I don't know how you do it. I guess it's because you're getting paid whether they listen to you or not.
Getting old.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Well, good evening, Commissioners. My name's Roland Wolkers at 519 South Elizabeth Street. I've been a 35-year resident here. Raised 5 children, all went to Marine City High School. I'm a retired police chief from Shelby Township. I have 40 years in law enforcement. I worked in narcotics. I was a DARE officer for 5 years in Utica Community Schools. I was a school resource officer in Utica High School. And I work for the Sheriff's Department. I do public safety in the schools and do the East China schools in the south end of the county. And I'm here to talk about the marijuana ordinance. And I only have 5 minutes. I could spend a half hour on it. But I think it's really important, as you see, a lot of communities are opting out of it, and I really strongly support that Marine City does the same thing and sends a message. We worked hard in Marine City to develop a reputation statewide and in the area that we're a community that's for the arts and for tourism and families to come here and enjoy themselves. If we open our community up to any kind of marijuana retail sales, I think what it's going to do is send the wrong message out to the state about what Marine City's about. That's one aspect. The biggest aspect I'm concerned about is how it affects children and in our community. Colorado and Washington, unfortunately, and Michigan, because of, in my opinion, a lot of money was brought into the state from out of state to legalize marijuana. What's happened is in Colorado and Washington, OUID, drunk driving, has gone up, fatalities have gone up, visits to emergency rooms, also in their unwise selection of allowing edibles. Children are getting them, emergency rooms are going up. And if you have retail sales in here, absolutely, it's going to be more available to our kids. Also, because the federal law restricts or is marijuana is illegal federally, all transactions have to be done in cash. And I can tell you as a law enforcement officer, I worked in criminal investigations with the federal government and task force and narcotics. When you have large amounts of cash, large amounts of drugs in your community, people are going to show up. It's not the kind of people we want showing up in our community. I've talked to local law enforcement, talked to the sheriff. Law enforcement almost unanimously is opposed to this. However, in a democracy, people made the choice that they want to have the choice of having a second option besides alcohol, and that's what democracy is about. However, we have the option of limiting retail sales and wholesale coming into our community. So I strongly recommend that you, like the other communities in our area, step up to the plate for our kids in our community and say no to having marijuana brought into our community. I see it's on the agenda. I hope we're going to move positively in a positive way. If not, I hope to get on the agenda at the next meeting, the meeting after that, and bring you a whole lots of information, more than what I can do in 5 minutes. But thank you so much for my attention. Appreciate it.
Anyone else like to speak?
Michael Frank, 525 Woodward Street. I'm also here to talk about recreational marijuana. Just to piggyback on a couple things that were just said. Yeah, OUIDs have gone up in Colorado, but what they fail to mention a lot of times with those fear-mongering articles and facts is that the population is going up. People are moving there. People are moving there to enjoy the tourism. People are moving to Colorado, period. The real estate there is out of control right now because so many people are moving there. So that is a huge factor. If population is going to go up, obviously the OUIDs and such are going to go up as well. So those facts are a little skewed. Also, having to do with the banks. Banks are actually starting to come around. There's been a credit union in Colorado that has been given a provisional approval to start dealing with marijuana businesses. So it is starting to come around. The federal government is starting to realize it's happening no matter what, which is kind of, you know, what's happening. I mean, the people want this. As our city manager mentioned, the city itself, people in the city has approved this overwhelmingly. Recreational itself, you know, that doesn't necessarily talk about dispensaries and retail and commercial facilities. So I took it upon myself to do a little poll on Facebook. I know it's not official, but it's something. All right, and the results were crazy. I mean, 93% of the people that voted in this poll today said they're for it. They're for a dispensary, maybe not being on Water Street, but maybe Kmart Plaza. I don't think anybody wants to see dispensaries littered all over Water Street. That's not what we want. That would send the wrong message. But I think Kmart Plaza would be good. I think you know, we'd be killing two birds with one stone by allowing industry itself, commercial grow operations. You know, we have a lot of empty industrial space that we could fill up. You know, that's increasing tax revenue. We also have a water plant that's underutilized. Allowing grow facilities would greatly increase our water usage, keep our water bills for the rest of the people under control. So I think those are things that you guys really need to consider, because you'd really be doing the businesses in town, the people in town, a disservice by opting out of this. I really don't think that it's necessary. You know, we have a lot of great restaurants, awesome candy store, a music store that definitely could use more traffic. And open the door to this, if it was done carefully, done responsibly, would be good for all of that. You know, as you know, 15% of the state, what the state makes on this, will be shared with the cities that don't opt out, 15% of the overall tax revenue. And we can also tax them at a 3% sales tax. Okay, we could tax a dispensary, we could also tax a commercial grow operation. So there's money that we badly need since, you know, the millage was voted down. I think that waiting would be a mistake. I think we really should try to jump out in front of this instead of cowering in the bushes on it. It's happening no matter what. It's going to be here no matter what. The state just approved the okay of delivery, okay? So that means if we don't do it, then neighboring places are going to do it, and they're going to end up making money off of the people that live here anyways. It's coming. There's nothing. You're not going to be able to stop it. The only thing we can try to do is control it and get in front of it and be responsible and be careful about it. Because, guys, this is what the people want. This is the change of times. I know it's uncomfortable. I know a lot of people don't like it, the idea, but I think if we just shelve some of those fears and really, really open up our minds and think, how much more different is it than what's already going on? I mean, this gentleman said that it's going to be bad for kids, and kids can get it anyways, okay? I grew up in this town. Marijuana was never a problem for me to get, okay? So that whole point, it's just the same fear-mongering, you know, reefer madness stuff that is just, it's ridiculous. And for the city not to take advantage of this big opportunity, especially in the position that we are with a hotel and kind of turning this place into a tourist destination, I think this could be really good if done responsibly. Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
My name is Bill Tins. I live at 435 South Main. I didn't come here with the intention of listening about the pot laws, but I can tell you something from my experience. Maybe the sheriff has a little more, but I had enough pot and seen enough pot that nobody in this room could carry that amount. It is a fun drug. And those people go goofy, and like he said, we can control it. Tell me that about liquor, and tell me that about opioids. The kids won't get it. I think half them legislators are on that stuff. I'm wholeheartedly against it. There's no use sending them down the creek and giving them that. And like he said about Colorado, a lot of money comes from Colorado. And he do have problems. And people are going there to get the marijuana. Is that what you want in Marine City? What I did come to talk about is I heard rumors of your parking ban, which last year I thought you were going to use a little common sense with them. And from what people were telling me, this is as dumb as it was last year. I mean, we get an inspector to come out and see whether I'm going to okay would he get a parking permit. Tell the kid, park in my driveway, I live in Clay Township. You wonder why young people ain't here and we're going to put pot houses here. Great. You change it from a part-time inspector to a queen. This is really stupid. I told you last year you got to use common sense when you do this stuff. And when you have to have, now he's quite qualified, but when you got to speak to a lawyer, you ain't got my common sense. Because he's got to explain what you said. He understands what I'm saying, but we don't understand what they're saying. That's not helping the people. And I do not have much respect for your inspector. You people might remember I was here over a tree. Do you remember that tree? Okay, when I called about a complaint, I know the address. We had the tree removed. I said, I wish you would have told me. I said, I went to 5 meetings. All you people said was we can't touch it on private property. The Queen Inspector got rid of it. She told me that on the phone. I said, you know who you're talking to? Well, yeah. I said, what about those mattresses down the street? She said, there's nothing I can do. Now, I think when people ask your inspector questions, she ought to take the Fifth Amendment. It sounds better. Because when she says something to somebody, it's not good. I said, the man never shoveled the snow. She said, there's nothing I can do. I said, good. Because you converted me. He makes money off that Holy Land. I pay for my gas for my lawnmower, my snow blowers, and all the other crap that goes around. Pick up the leaves. He don't do nothing but make money off his. So I told her, you convinced me. Whatever he does, I will do, because that's the law of the land. And that's the only thing she recognizes. I don't know what you people talk about. You want people to come into town and not park. You're gonna turn this into the Mackinac Island of St. Clair County? Buy a field out by BP, pave it, and let horse-drawn carriages bring people in. This is so stupid. You buy a house, they won't let you park anywhere around it. Honestly, gee. Good luck, people.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
Okay, my name is Tamara Harris. I live at 512 Westminster Street. And he brought up the parking issue. And I have to agree with him. We live on a corner lot, and we have 5 cars. We do not have a driveway, and we do not have a garage. I believe at some point when they paved the streets, there was a dip placed appropriately where they thought it should go. There's never been a driveway in my yard. And when I called and they told me about the dip, they're like, well, we can approve that. But I don't think that those of us that don't have driveways, never had a driveway or a garage, should have to pay these fees. In the past, if you park on the lawn, then they don't want you to do that, and you get ticketed. Well, then I was told, well, you can park them back there. Well, that yard space, because it's a nice, decent-sized fenced yard, we have dogs, and we have grandchildren that play out there that we watch on a regular basis. And in order to do that, to take the rebar that secures the gate and, prevents people from wandering in and out of our yard, would have to be taken down. And I don't know who made the law or who does it, but there should be a waiver for people that don't have it. I get that there's people that use their garages and such for storage, whatnot, good for them. And I can see them having to pay for additional parking, but not for those of us that live here. It's over 2,600 square feet, and yeah, I have 5 adults with 5 vehicles because they all work. And I think it's ridiculous. And I understand that, in a lot of people's minds, it's only $12 a year. But I shouldn't have to pay you to park in front of my house. There was nothing ever there. It's like, it's just dumb. So my question then is, what about the holidays that are coming? And we have family coming in from out of town that's going to be staying overnight. Do they have to pay the $12 while they're here? Does anybody know?
We can address this in the office.
Super.
This is something, a case-by-case basis, that we need to look at the cases. And I'm not familiar with your particular circumstance, but we'll be glad to look at it.
Well, again, does anybody know what to do with overnight parking with guests for the holiday?
You can't have guests.
Honestly, that you should all know the answer to that. You shouldn't have to look it up or.
There is a provision in the ordinance for 1 guest pass.
So if all of our children come into town, they're gonna get ticketed, is that what you're saying? Because we can only have 1.
We have an ordinance we have to pass. This is public comment. I think we need to move on.
Anyone else like to speak? Moving on to approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support.
Any questions, concerns, or changes on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to approval of the minutes for the City Commission regular minutes, November 15th, 2018.
Make a motion to approve the Minutes of the November 15th meeting as presented.
Support.
Any questions, concerns, or deletions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the consent agenda for the 2019 meeting schedule. Need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 meeting schedule.
Support.
Any questions or concerns on the meeting schedule? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbach?
Yes.
Motion carries.
2017, 2018 audit presentation by McBride Manley and Company.
Good evening, City Commission, Mayor Vandenbach. See a lot of familiar faces, but I'll introduce myself. My name is Curtis McBride, and I'm a CPA from McBride Manley and Company. I'm the managing partner for our firm, and I'm also the governmental accounting and auditing director. I've been with our firm for just over 18 years, and with me this evening is Samantha Hudson. She is our audit manager. She's been with us for just over 9 years, I want to say. And we are here this evening to present the results of the June 30, 2018 audit for the city of Marine City. I did hand out a physical copy of my presentation, so you should have that sitting in front of you. The only thing I do ask is that you do not distribute that to the general public, because it's only summarized information from our full audit report, and it does not contain our audit opinion, so thank you for that in advance. Of course, the full financial statement is available to the general public. It is by law. Before I get into the slides, I want to talk about our audit opinion first. Now, there are 3 types of opinions you can receive from your auditor. There's what we call a clean or unmodified audit opinion, which means that we believe your financial statements and records are clean, they're fairly stated, and they're in compliance with our professional standards. Then there's what we call a modified audit opinion, which means that we feel that for the most part they're in compliance, but there may be a few exceptions. And then there's what we call an adverse audit opinion, which means that we do not feel that the financial records are accurate and they're not in compliance. So I am pleased to announce that for June 30, 2018, the City of Marine City did receive a clean or unmodified audit opinion from our firm. Now that's the highest audit opinion you can receive from your auditor. I do want to clarify that we're just providing an opinion on the accuracy of your records, and we're not providing any type of opinion on the financial health of the city. That's not the primary purpose of our audit. Moving over to the slides, the first fund I want to talk about is the general fund. Now, the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, state shared revenues, and federal, state, and local grant money. Here we're looking at the balance sheet for the general fund for June 30. You can see the general fund finished the year with total assets of about $1,739,000. Had liabilities against those assets of about $135,000 to finish the year with an ending fund balance of $1,604,000. Now, the one thing I want you guys to keep in mind when I talk about your general fund, I'm talking about your general fund and also your capital projects fund, which you guys keep internally. Under our professional standards, we have to combine those 2 funds. The capital projects fund doesn't qualify as a separate fund. So out of that $1,604,000, $45,000 of that is your capital projects fund balance, and the other $1.56 million is your general fund balance. Now, to put that into perspective, that's about 61% of annual expenditures in your general fund, or another way to look at it is you have about 7.5 months worth of expenditures in your ending general fund balance. Now, there are a couple of benchmarks out there to kind of gauge the financial health of your fund balance. The Michigan Department of Treasury recommends that at a minimum, your general fund balance level be at 10% of annual expenditures. Now, that's a minimum recommendation. So what that means is if you're anywhere near that 10% threshold, you need to start doing things to build your fund balance back up. So in my opinion, at your 61%, you have a solid, healthy general fund balance. And then we have the GFOA, which is the Governmental Finance Officers Association, which recommends that at a minimum you have 2 months worth of expenditures in your general fund, and you currently have about 7.5 months. So again, those are minimum benchmarks though. So in my opinion, in no way, shape, or form do I believe you have an excessive fund balance. I also want to make that clear. If we use that 10% threshold to put this in perspective, that would leave your fund balance at $255,000, which certainly would not be enough in savings to plan for, for any emergencies or any unanticipated expenditures you may have coming up. So if you had a $100 million budget like a large city, then I would say yes. Closer to 10 or 15% would be more appropriate, but not with a municipality the size of the city of Marine City. Looking at the income statement for the general fund, here we're comparing 2017 to 2018. You can see in 2017, your general fund generated about $3,052,000, and you actually generated a little bit less in 2018, where you only generated $2,796,000, but that's because in 2017, you received a $225,000 grant for the hotel project, and obviously you didn't receive that in 2018. So that really explains the decrease in your revenues between 17 and 18. And looking at expenditures, you can see expenditures also went down. You spent about $2,763,000 in 17, and you spent about $2,599,000 in 2018. That's related to the same thing. So that grant money that you received in 2017 for that hotel project, you also spent that in that same year. So that explains why your expenditures went down. So your general fund generated $2,796,000 in revenues. You spent $2,599,000. So you actually had an increase to your fund balance during the year of about $197,000. Here we're looking at the general fund revenues specifically, again comparing 17 to 18. As I mentioned, that the total revenues did go down because of the grant money. You received that grant money for the hotel in 17. Now, you can see that property taxes make up roughly, for 18, made up about 54 or 55% of your total revenues. So you generated about $1,528,000 in property tax revenues. Some other major revenue categories would be state revenue sharing, so that's state sales tax, where you generated $453,000, or that's about 16% of your total revenues. Garbage collection, refuse, $392,000, or 14% of the total. And again, you generated $2,796,000 in total revenues in your general fund for 18. Here we're looking at general fund expenditures by type, again comparing 17 to 18. Looking at the expenditures by type, you can see that the majority of your expenditures are for salaries and payroll taxes and benefits related to those salaries. So you can see you spend about $847,000 in salaries, another $422,000 in payroll taxes and benefits related to city employees. So really, those two combined make up about 48 to 49% of your general fund budget. And you can see some of the other major expenditure types would be professional and contractual. There are a lot of things in there. Legal's in there, our audit fees are in there, cleaning is in there, IT monitoring, inspections would be in there, and the payments to Channel 6 are all in professional and contractual. And that makes up about 8% of your budget. You can see refuse is about $296,000, or 11% of your budget. And as I mentioned in my previous slide, you spent about $2,599,000 in your general fund during 2018. Next, I'm getting into some trend analysis. This is always interesting. So here we're looking at property tax revenues going all the way back to 2009. Now, if you remember what I said in my previous slide, your property taxes make up about 54% of your total revenues. So you can see in 2009, you actually generated about $2,021,000 in property tax revenues. You can see that number came all the way down to $1,459,000 for 15. You can see it trending upward, but it's still nowhere near where it was in 2009. So you generated $1,528,000 in property taxes for 18, but that's $493,000 less in property taxes that you generated in 18 than you did back in 2009. So that's a 25% decline. And as I mentioned, that makes up 54% of your total revenues in the general fund. So that's substantial. Now, this is the result of two major things. One of them is the constitutional limitations we have in the state of Michigan for property taxes. So We have Proposal A, which was enacted into our Constitution in 1994, which limits property tax growth for individual properties to the lesser of inflation or 5%. Then you have the Headley Amendment, which is almost like a double whammy, which limits the city as a whole. So what happened is, if you guys remember in 2008 or 2009, when our economy was struggling, we had a housing crisis. So we had home values that decreased by as much as 30 to 35% in 1 year. Well, because of these limitations on property tax growth, it's going to take a long time for those property taxes to get back to where they were before the decline. So even though in reality the market value of these houses have all gone up during that time period, the property taxes are not falling in line with the true market value of these properties. Which is why a lot of municipalities and school districts are struggling, because their main revenue source has gone down significantly over the last 10 to 15 years. Now this next slide, we're looking at the 10-year historical fund balance trend in the general fund, again going back to 2009. So you can see back into 2009, your general fund balance was about $1,078,000. You can see it dipped all the way down to $567,000 in 2011, and that fell in line with your decline in property tax. You lost a significant amount of property tax revenues in those 2 years, which ate up a big portion of your fund balance. So the good news is, really the city commission should be commended for this. You guys were able to budget appropriately, and you can see you're actually able to recover your fund balance over the last several years, and now it currently sits at about $1,604,000. Now the next two funds I want to talk about briefly these are a little bit different than the general fund. These are the major local street funds. We call these special revenue funds, and we call them special revenue funds because their resources are restricted for a special or specific purpose. And that is for the maintenance and construction of city streets. So looking at the local street fund, this is the balance sheet. You can see the local street fund had $356,000 of total assets, had about $5,000 of liabilities against those assets, and finished the year with $351,000 in fund balance. You can see the major street fund had $639,000 in total assets at the end of the year, $31,000 in liabilities to finish the year with an ending fund balance of about $608,000. Now, looking at the income statement for these two funds, you can see the local street fund generated about $141,000. It spent about $136,000, and then it received another $78,000 of transfers from other funds. That's primarily from the major street fund. And as I mentioned in my previous slide, the local street fund finished the year with a $351,000 fund balance. The major street fund generated $293,000 during the year, spent about $104,000, and then transferred $72,000 over to the local street fund. Now, you are allowed to do that. So these two funds are actually governed under Public Act 51 of 1951. So these are what we call Act 51 funds. So under Act 51, the major street fund is allowed to transfer up to 50% of its revenues over to the local street fund, and that's allowable. And you can see the major street fund finished the year with an ending fund balance of $608,000. Now, in both cases, both of these funds actually have fund balance levels that are more than 100% of annual expenditures. But it's typical for these two funds to have fund balance levels that fluctuate drastically from year to year, depending on what type of street projects you have going on. So in years when you have significant street projects, you're going to eat up that fund balance level. In years when you don't have any significant street projects, you're going to be preserving the fund balance and saving up. So 2018 was a saving year, if you think of it that way. And as I understand it, in your 2018 and 2019 budget, you do have some street projects planned where you're going to be using some of these fund balance levels. The last fund I want to talk about briefly is the Water and Sewer Fund. We're going to look at the balance sheet here. Now, this fund is a lot different than the other three funds I discussed. This is what we call an enterprise fund, and we call it an enterprise fund because it's accounted for more like a private business than it is a government. And that's because, in theory, it's supposed to be self-sustaining. So the Water and Sewer Department charges the city residents for the use of the water and sewer systems, and it's supposed to be self-sustaining. So here, looking at the balance sheet, you can see the Water and Sewer Fund had $7,631,000 of assets on hand at the end of the year. you can see that most of that one is in what we call capital assets of about $5,850,000. Now, these are non-liquid assets, so basically this is not cash, and these are not assets that can be easily converted to cash to pay bills. So capital assets would be the actual water and sewer plants themselves, and all the major equipment and lines associated with the plants. So it would make sense for this fund to have the majority of its assets tied up in what we call capital assets. You can see you had liabilities against those assets of about $3,103,000. Most of that is in the form of what we call long-term debt. So you had a few bonds outstanding and a lease. So you had a $120,000 bond, which actually matures in 2021. You had another $70,000 bond, which matures in 2019. And then you had a $1.125 million bond, which matures in 2026. And then you have a $361,000 lease for a purchase of a vacuum truck, if you remember that, and that loan matures in 2024. So that's most of your debt in the water and sewer fund. And you finish the year with an ending net position of about $4,528,000. So that's the equity position, if you will, in the water and sewer plant. In my opinion, that's healthy. You don't have any net position issues in your water and sewer fund. I want to talk really briefly about the net OPEB liability, because this is kind of new and a hot topic for 18. This is retirees' health care is another way to think of this. So our accounting standards required us to recognize the net OPEB liability in your financial statements for the first time this year. Now, that's a little misleading because it's always been there. It's just in our full audit report. In the center here, there are note disclosures, and we've always disclosed the unfunded actuarially accrued liability. But this is the first time that the city was required to actually present it in the financial statement pages. So in looking at your liability, you can see that at the end of June 30, 2018, your net OPEB liability, or your future retirees' healthcare obligation, was roughly just over $4 million, which left you with a funded status of about 4.4%, which is very low. However, the city of Marine City is not unique in this regard. A lot of cities that do offer retirees healthcare or did offer retirees healthcare before they closed their plans are in situations similar to this. And this is a little bit unique because in the state of Michigan, you are required to pre-fund your pension plan. So you have to fund that actuarially. So an actuary actually calculates how much you have to fund it every year, and by state law, you are required to fund it that way. However, for retirees healthcare, you can elect to fund it on what we call a pay-as-you-go basis. So basically what that means is they allow you to fund it as you have money available in your budget. So that's why this situation occurs. In the next slide, we talk a little bit about the state law change related to retirees healthcare. Under PA 202 of 2017, which was actually passed in December of last year, and I briefly talked about it at my audit presentation last year, the state requires annual reporting of the funded status of the pension and OPEB obligations to the state of Michigan. So you guys actually did that a few months ago. Your treasurer, Mary Ellen, actually had to report that to the state. So you were considered underfunded in your pension if you were less than 60% funded. You guys are fine in your pension. You are not considered underfunded in the city pension. If you were less than 40% funded in your retirees healthcare, you were considered underfunded. And then what you had to do is adopt a corrective action plan. If you guys remember that, you did that recently at a meeting. So that's what you adopted at that meeting. That was to be in compliance with this state law. And as if you recall, the corrective action plan was very manageable. So in other words, if I remember correctly, it's only requiring you to contribute an extra $12,000 a year over the next 30 years to be fully funded. So even though you had that $4 million liability sitting out there, this is very manageable. And this debt is much different than other debt. This is not like accounts payable that's short-term or even other long-term debt. This is a debt that you're going to be paying over the next 30 years. So you're not going to have to write a check for retirees healthcare next week or even next year. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind with this. You're definitely in a manageable situation with your retirees healthcare. Now the last thing I want to talk about briefly is our audit process. Just so you guys know what we do throughout the course of our audit without giving too much away. Our audit is performed in what we call all the major accounting functions. So we look at purchasing, cash receipts, utility billing, adjusting journal entries, payroll, and bank reconciliation. So for purchasing, we're actually pulling invoices and we're reviewing them. We're making sure that they've been approved by both management and at the commission level. We're making sure that the expenditures are appropriate, that they're in compliance with state law. We're also looking at electronic and credit card transactions, because those are big. You know, obviously, it's not 1982 anymore. More and more transactions are becoming electronic, so we've had to adapt our auditing procedures accordingly. Cash receipts are big. We're making sure that nothing happens to cash from the time it gets to the city office to the time it gets to the bank. We're making sure the cash gets to the bank. We're looking at utility billing. We're making sure that the city residents are being billed for the correct usage. We're making sure they're being billed for the appropriate rates, making sure the rates have been approved by the city commission. We're looking at adjusting journal entries, payroll. We're making sure that employees are being paid for time actually spent working, and that they're actually being paid for approved pay rates. And then we're doing our own independent bank reconciliations. And of course, we do year-end reconciliations on the general ledger accounts to prepare our financial statements and give our audit opinion. And we really have a great relationship with your management. They're in contact with us throughout the year. And that's really the kind of relationship we would prefer, because neither one of us likes a surprise at the end of the year when we come in for the audit. So we have constant contact with management, whether it's accounting or auditing questions or general consulting issues. So that's the other thing. We're in constant contact with their management throughout the year. We typically spend, in a typical year, anywhere from 425 to 450 hours on the city of Marine City, whether it's the audit or other consulting-related engagements. That's all I have. I apologize for the long presentation.
That's great.
Any questions for me?
Questions? Very good.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Well done.
You.
All right, moving on to the refuse, solid waste collection and disposal bids.
Hey, Dave?
Yeah.
Would you like to take maybe a couple-minute break so that they can tear down and get out of here?
Sure. That's good with everyone else?
Sure.
Okay. Let's take, we only wanted 5 minutes, and then you're the last one to sit down.
Great, give you 10.
Get
All
chatty
right,
sometimes.
we're moving on to the residential solid waste collection and disposal bids. Lean, you want to give us an intro on this?
So as you know, we have our contract is up at the end of the year. And one of the things that we've done since I've been here is have been contracting out to make sure that we are getting a good, fair price for services. We owe that to the community and the residents. So we put together the bid proposal. We did get 2 bids back, one from Marcotte and one from Mterra, who is our existing service provider. The rates from Mterra are lower than the Marcotte ones. They do have all of the information and some of the exceptions. Mterra also provided I think it's a 5-year proposal, 5.5-year contract pricing as well for consideration.
Can I get a motion? Pick one of the 2. So we can discuss it.
I make a motion that we accept Mterra Environmental's bid for our solid waste collection and disposal.
Support.
Motion, support.
Can I get clarification on would that be for the 3.5 or the 5.5 year bid?
I'm gonna say for the 3.5.
And still support.
Yes.
I think we're stuck between a rock and a hard place with this one. We don't want to pass Mterra because of some of the quality that we've been getting, but at that price range, it's 24%, 23 to 24%. As being good stewards for the city's money, I can't see having that much of an increase in cost.
I agree.
Anyone else have any feelings on it? Yes, Lisa?
I guess some of the stuff that kind of grates me in their contract too is, like, you get one recycling bin that they smash and bust, and now in here, I gotta pay $10 for another one. You know, and I watched them the one time when they didn't pick up our yard waste for several days, and they finally sent a truck down, and it was very obvious the gentleman was angry at having to come back to pick it up. So then all of our garbage cans took the brunt of his displeasure. So, and I realize that the difference in the cost is it's a lot of difference. I know the other company is supposedly a lot better, but there's also a bigger cost. Is there anything else that we can do in these contracts when we don't get the proper service? I mean, is there any recourse, you know, besides the usual griping, that we can do to get these guys off their butts and to collect this stuff when they're supposed to?
A couple of things on the contract, you could impose a little more detail on your service standards with stipulated penalties, so that you don't have to go to lengthy processes, legally, arbitration or otherwise, for violations. And we've done that in many other communities with respect to service-related issues.
Okay.
The other thing you can do in contracts now is you can have what's known as a favored nations clause, wherein, excuse me, your current provider would be obligated on a yearly basis to show to this community the bids and the contracts that it's doing in other communities to ensure that you're getting the same low rates that they might be giving away somewhere else. And that's known as a favored nations contract provision. But what you really need in this contract is service standards and stipulated penalties.
Kathy's done a great job of documenting all the problems we've had, and I truly, I feel bad for her that we're going, you know, we have the potential of going back with them, but, and I know she works extremely hard to relay all the complaints to Tara, and then give us a report on it, but at these costs, I don't know.
Well, if we go with these costs, all I'm saying is we put the provisions in so that we've got some leverage against them, so that when they don't pick this stuff up, we've got some recourse.
Yes, Mr. Braxton.
One question, if we put those provisions in, does that require us to have them rebid their pricing? If it was not in the original package they're bidding on?
It wouldn't necessarily require a rebid, but it would require cooperation from them in sitting down and modifying the contract.
Do we have somebody from here from either company?
Yeah, my name is Gary Baristo. I'm with Mterra. I've been in the waste business for 25 years. Right now, I'm responsible for interacting with 67 different communities. It's, for some reason, the service, and I agree that it has, it's diminished. And today we had a major shakeup with the company. And, you know, having been in it for so long and provided such good service with, I've worked for all the companies. And then right now, one of our problems is the marketplace. It's hard to find good people. And I'll give you an example. When we got Port Huron, we hired some people. We decided who we were going to hire. We asked them to report. First day, we got 2 phone calls. 2 drivers said, "We're not coming in." We said, "How come?" They said, "Because Waste Management offered us $2,000 signing bonus if we'd go with them." So it's very competitive. The workforce isn't what it was, but we have taken some action now to improve that. I could put you, I'll give you, I have one account, it's called Akron Township. I called them and asked them how we're doing, and I said, "Can you tell me the number of complaints?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me talk to the clerk." In 2 years, they had 2 complaints. So it just depends on the workforce. that you have servicing. And we don't want to be a bad service organization. It's never been our intent. And sometimes when I talk to some of the people from operations, I'm puzzled when somebody does something every week, same route. I mean, you would think that after a while, they certainly wouldn't forget a household to forget to pick up waste. And I know when I talk to Kathy, I don't like to talk to Kathy because I know she doesn't have good news.
Yeah.
So, but you got some. I think you probably have the lowest rate of all the communities we service in St. Clair County, and we'll continue to make it better. We terminated some people today, and going back to the drivers and say, it's real simple. Pick up the can, you empty it, put the can back where you found it. You don't throw it. But there are times when customers will call, and we ask, did you have it out at 7? Oh, yeah, we had it out at 7. So there's the other side, but it's minimal. But some people aren't so truthful. And at the end of the day, those missed stops, we try to pick up the next day, but not till the end of the route of another location that we're servicing. Of course, I'm going to say this, but I think we're going to get better. There's a lot of pressure on us to get better. Some communities got the better people that work for us. But I had a nice long talk today with the general manager, and I told him that thank God some of those people aren't working for me, because they wouldn't be working for me. I'm from the old school. You know, you get paid, you work, and it's not, I wouldn't want to be a thrower on the back of a garbage truck. It's a very difficult job. But there's no reason to be throwing, you know, and throwing these cans or the recycling bins. We got the biggest recycling bin out there.
Yes.
It's 22 gallons, I believe. And you take like China Township, which we have, and they got 1,400 houses that we service, and we've given out 1,600 bins. You know, those bins can be used for other things. And if we had it to do over again, I think we'd go with the something more substantial, like you find in, like, let's say St. Clair Shores, some of those other communities with side lift trucks. And so we go forward with the people that own the company. It's a sole ownership, a family owns it, and try to encourage going with the side lift, get a bigger can for recycling. And not to bore you, but recycling has collapsed. The demand has gone down, and the amount of recycling has gone up substantially. And it used to be, 3 years ago, we got $12 a ton for recycling. Now, I kid you not, it costs us $100 to get rid of it. And we can't pass that along to people we have contracts with. And nobody cares, nobody wants to hear a sad story from a big company, so.
Do you see any movement in getting rid of it, like some areas have done?
Well,
recycling?
There are some areas that don't want recycling because of the cost.
Yeah.
Most of those are areas up in the thumb because half the people aren't there during the winter, so they don't want to pay for something year-round that they don't really care about. They've taken some surveys up in Caseville, and 60% of the people said they didn't want it, so they don't have it.
Yeah.
But I think you roll the dice a bit with us, and I feel confident we're going to get better at it. And at the end of the day, you got the best pricing compared to Marcotte. And I've known Marcotte. I knew Charlie Marcotte, who passed some time ago, and his daughter Tracy is running the business. She's a tough cookie. She's very good at what she does. But I think that I didn't actually see a copy. They give me the copy to deliver. They don't show me the copy. At one point, whichever one you would have selected, you're saving $67,000 a year. And if you go with a 5-year program, it's $350,000. So you take, you take a little pain maybe, but we're gonna get better at it.
I think I see the pickup of the recyclables and the garbage is always pretty quick. It's the yard waste that seems to linger. Sometimes the whole neighborhood will get missed, or it'll linger for a day or two, or it's not picked up till almost 7 o'clock at night. So, to me, that's one of the things that I've noticed the most is the yard waste is really, really, really late.
Yeah, it's all about, schedule, it's all about routing and efficiencies in routing, because we do more than, I think we're the biggest hauler in St. Clair County now. And it's a tough business, but we're here to play and stay, and we've given you a pricing that would suggest that maybe it's a good idea for you to vote for the contract and hope that we're gonna get better, and you roll the dice, and maybe the next time the next contract comes around, maybe you won't even wanna put it out for bid, you want to negotiate an extension, and I take care of extensions, and I can tell you, every time I've offered up an extension and it's been accepted, the community took the, because that's the only time you can negotiate. And we never start off with a price that's greater than in the negotiations. Because people always say, well, we're paying $15 a month per household. We think it's a little bit too high, and if you want us, you're gonna have to come down for it, yada, 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 so. But anyways, that's my story. I'm gonna stick to it for tonight.
Thank you very
And see
much.
if we can do better, okay?
So what do you want to do?
Any other questions or concerns on it right now?
One of the exceptions that was noted, in the RFP, we had been looking for a 30-day termination clause. Their exception is a 90-day. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not sure if that's something that you're agreeable with, or if you'd like to see some other number there.
So that's currently in there.
The yeah.
Okay. Well,
So just to let you know, in essence, what they have bid is a 90-day termination clause.
I don't see, was that in both? Both?
I don't think that there was an exception from the proposal for.
Your bid document sought 30 days.
I don't see if there's a whole lot of room on this. Does anyone else have any?
well, unless you want to build any provisions in, that was the only thing.
They're looking for a 90-day provision. You could accept that in exchange for some language you're looking for.
Could you guys work on that then? And
Sure. See if
we could
See if they're
If we
receptive.
can meet in the middle with
approve
60.
it contingent upon
Give them
their.
90 contingent on getting some stipulated penalties.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that.
I mean, and every community has the same issue. The sign of a good contract is when you don't get phone calls. That's how most communities measure these contracts.
Mhm.
Pricing and no phone calls, no phone
Right.
calls. That's when the contract's working.
Right. Okay, so we've got a motion.
Do we need to amend it though for,
Yeah.
the
Would you
provision?
amend that one?
Yes. Okay, I'd like to amend my motion that we accept the 90-day termination on this, on Emterra's Environmental, in exchange for service standards and stipulations and penalties in the contract. That work?
Second.
That was good.
Motion second. Any other questions on it?
Nope.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosh,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to the board vacancies.
Thank
This
you.
is just an update. We have right now, we have one vacancy and one alternate for the zoning board of appeals. We have one vacancy for board of review. We have two vacancies for the historical commission, two vacancies for Tifa, one vacancy for the pension board, 4 vacancies for the dangerous building, or Board of Appeals for dangerous building. That would be 2 citizens, 1 building contractor, and 1 state registered architect or engineer, and 1 vacancy for planning.
Mayor, could you announce that anyone interested should have applications to me by December 12th?
No. So you should have your applications in by December 12th to the city clerk. Okay, moving on to Tifa subcommittee. Anyone interested in sitting on the subcommittee?
I will.
I will too.
Okay, so we've got 2. Anyone else,
You might want to fight over that.
no, I wasn't. I was good.
How many do you need?
Huh? 2 is fine. So, could I get a motion to put these 2 fine volunteers to work?
Make a motion to accept Commissioner Hendricks and Commissioner Bryson's being on the Tifa subcommittee.
Support?
Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Good luck. New business. Audit engineer letter from Manley, McBride Manley.
Engagement.
Engagement, yeah, engagement. Man, I got better glasses.
So this in essence is a proposal from our auditor to continue services. The increase is $865 over what we paid last year. So the contract amount would be $29,225 for the proposal.
Is this just for 1 year?
3.
3?
Yeah.
And what are the increases on the other?
Well, there is no increases. That would be the price you would get. And actually, the last time we did a 3-year engagement with them, they did not increase it from the prior 2 years. So I mean, they stayed at 5 years at that $28,360.
Can I get a motion to approve the contract for the audit?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for McBride Manley for the audit for $29,225.
Support.
Motion, support, any questions on it? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Callahan?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Mayor Vanderwaal?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to high-tech server proposal.
We have a quote from our consultant, High Tech, for an email server. This is something actually that has been needed to be replaced ever since really I've started at the city. So 3 years we've been needing this. We've been experiencing a lot of problems with our email because we are kind of operating at capacity and the server is outdated. I understand that the server has gotten to a point where it will no longer be supported, so that any type of updates for virus protection or anything will not be able to be loaded on the server. So we have really gotten to a point where we have to do something about the server now. Jay with High Tech is here if you have any questions about the server specifically. This unfortunately is not my language, so I wouldn't necessarily be able to interpret this quote for you.
We know it's not my language.
Well, if the commission would be okay with it, I would like to address a couple points and reasons why that you should look at replacing your server at this time. By the way, my name's Jay St. James. I'm from High Tech System Service. I'm your rep here at Marine City for your account. Some of you know me, some of you don't, but yeah, my card's included in there if you ever want to talk to me about anything. But so currently, the email server is over at the police department, and it's running Microsoft Small Business Server 2011. That operating system technically goes end of life from Microsoft in the year 2019, which means they won't be giving security updates or patching or support. Like if you call Microsoft, they won't support it any longer. That operating system is very old. Now, that operating system was a neat thing when it came out. It not only gave you your server software, but it also gave you your Exchange server, which handles your email bundled in. In Microsoft's infinite wisdom, they discontinued that, and they don't make it like that any longer. So with Microsoft no longer releasing security vulnerability patches for the ever-evolving threats, it opens you up to more malicious software, hackers, that sort of thing. Microsoft will no longer release fixes for bugs, performance issues, or applications and device compatibility, which can lead to slowness, device incompatibility, and increase in troubleshooting time. So again, that's a bad thing. Business critical applications may cease to work with it. They might not be supported any longer by them. And the security risk of running outdated software can lead to audit failures as well. Because it's in the police department, is where the server resides currently, it's open to more audits than it might be if it was at a different location, but that was how it was set up prior to High Tech taking over the city's contract, because we've been a year and a half, 2 years, and it was like that before. The server itself is 6.6 years old. In your presentation here, I have this thing that's called Warranty Master. This is a tool we use to look at warranties on things that we're supporting. And if you turn to the second page, up at the top where it says servers, the second server is a Dell server, and it'll show that it was purchased in May of 2012. So it's 6.6 years old. Industry standards are for server replacement. They generally recommend 5 years for server replacement. Municipalities tend to go a little bit longer than that in some cases because of budget and because of the type of applications you're running. You're not running CAD applications and things of that nature. You're doing water billing and internet surfing and office applications. So, you know, you're not that far off, but it does need to be replaced. Because if you don't, come back, hardware degradation over time mitigates failures, downtimes. The server could have a hardware failure, which would cause significant downtime, not only for PD, but for the entire city, because the mail all filters through there. There's some other issues right now that's going on with the server that basically, because it goes through the server, you have two different domains. You have a domain at the police department, and you have a domain at the city hall, and it's required people at the city hall to do double authentication. They have to authenticate to the server at city hall as well as at the police department. So sometimes that's a cumbersome process. It can cause issues because if their password changes, they have to change it in both locations and things like that. If we were to put a new server in, we could reconstruct how the city's set up and make it run more efficiently. We could create what's called a trust between the server at PD, which would be a Microsoft Exchange 2019 server, and also Microsoft 2019 server, and it could create a trust with the server that's over at City Hall, so it would only require one authentication at that point, which would be much more efficient, and it would be more aligned in best practices. There are some problems that the city's been experiencing with Outlook Web Access, being able to attach emails and things like that. We've spent countless hours. My engineer, Cody Mallory, over here, who I brought with me, he spent hours and hours and hours on trying to do this, and we've finally come to the conclusion that, you know, due to the age of the software and due to the age of the equipment, it's just time to make the replacement. The last area of concern, which I had talked to Elaine about, but there's may or may not have been a shift with this. With the current political environment, November 1st, there was a 10% increase on basically all IT products, because most IT products are manufactured in China. So there was a 10% tariff that was passed on to us, which is in turn passed on to you. There was talk that January 1st, there was going to be an additional 20% increase on that. Now, since then, if you've been watching the news, there's like a 90-day hiatus, but I got to caution you, I don't have confirmation of this, but I buy from several manufacturers, and I also buy from several nationwide distributors, and not one of them has sent me an email confirming that that is going to happen. So you might be okay till March 1st, but you might not. So I'm still in a holding pattern, but I just wanted to make you guys aware, and that's why Elaine wanted me to come to this board meeting to let you know, because on a small purchase like a desktop or something like that, 20% isn't that big of a deal, but when you're looking at a server, 20% is a significant amount of money. Any questions?
No, I'll just be glad when we get it fixed.
Anyone have any questions?
So how soon, or how long is it gonna take you to set this all up?
To do it, generally when we order in a server, it takes about 2 weeks to get all the hardware in and configured. And then we would probably want to work a schedule out with the city because there's going to be some downtime with email. So maybe we could work out something where we do it after hours or something along the lines that we'll try to do as much work as possible. Because we're replacing the entire server, we can run them tandem at the same time for a little bit so that there wouldn't be any, try to mitigate as much downtime as possible. But I would say, you know, it's anywhere between a 2 and 4 week process, depending what works with the city as well as getting everything in to be able to do it.
So you're looking probably about 1st of January or 2nd week?
Yeah, the big thing that I was concerned about was with the tariffs especially, is getting it ordered before January. Again, that might not happen because of the latest developments, but so far I haven't seen anything saying it's not gonna happen.
Yes,
I do have a question about the time to take care of the server, transferring everything. You have here 75 hours.
Yes.
To the tune of $6,750.
Yes.
That in essence is 2 full weeks. What is it that is going to?
A lot of that we can
that
do,
amount of
a lot of it we can do in-house, the configuration, things like that. What we're finding is there's really not a good migration path from Microsoft Small Business 2011 to Microsoft Exchange 2019. It's not like I can just slide it over. So we kind of have to move each individual mailbox at a time to make sure that we bring over everybody's legacy emails and things like that. We're finding that it takes approximately about an hour per mailbox to do that, and you guys have about 35 mailboxes.
With that being said, though, are there not other things that you can do while that's happening?
Yes, there is.
So
There
is
is.
it fair
It's
to charge us all that time for migrating?
As always, Elaine, when we do this, this is what I thought it was going to take. If we, and it won't be over that, but if we come in under that amount, I'm only going to bill you what we have into it. But that's my best guess, just based on past experiences, because we deal with a lot of different customers and a lot of different municipalities, and there's tons of people in this boat right now because it was a great solution 8 years ago where you could have your mail and your server all in one package, and then Microsoft decided to ruin that for everyone.
And then, could you touch a little bit on the warranty, the conversation that we had about
Yeah,
the 5-year
so
warranty?
included in this bid, I did include a 5-year warranty, and the reason I included the 5-year warranty, I'll step back again to what I mentioned earlier, was server replacement is usually done every 5 years. We tend to recommend to our clients to keep that under warranty the entire time. The main reason for that is HP guarantees next day parts availability on things that are under warranty. So if you had a catastrophic hardware failure, the part would ship next day, business day, and we'd be out there to fix it. The server comes standard with a 3-year warranty now, so we could take that piece out if we wanted to, if it was a cost issue. But we recommend doing the 5-year to keep it under that the entire time. With that said, again, with the costs, and I would have to present this to you, and I heard earlier that you guys have done leasing before. We do offer leasing options through Great America Leasing, and you know, we can do 24, 36, 48, whatever you feel comfortable with. A 48-month lease, I think, was around $500 and some per month, roughly, is what it came out to be. But you know, we could present that as an option for you as well if that was something you guys were interested in pursuing.
Any questions or concerns?
Nope, just want to fix the attachment thing, boy.
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah, drives you nuts.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep, thank you.
Can we get a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a new server system through High Tech for a total cost of $22,542. Not to exceed $22,542.
Support?
Motion, support. Any other questions on it? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next, we're moving on to the recreational marijuana discussion. Mr. Davis, would you lead us on this?
Sure, I provided you with a December 4th, 2018 memorandum, providing you with what I believe is the most current information, and I agree with some of the comments from the public that the information from the state is rolling out in an evolving manner. This is the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. This is different, unique, and separate from the prior legislation involving medical marijuana. This community, by not doing anything with respect to medical marijuana, under the law, prohibited medical marijuana facilities in this community. That's my understanding. We took no action on the medical marijuana. This act flip-flops that obligation. If the community wants to prohibit what are known as marijuana establishments, and there are 6 kinds that were adequately summarized earlier, you have to take affirmative action. You don't have to take that action tonight, but you need to consider that action early on so that the state can get notice that you've adopted a prohibitive ordinance, so that when they do finally come around and have their licensing and their review and their criteria set up, they know that your community is not accepting locations within any of your boundaries. On the other hand, you can take some action to begin working on the regulation of establishments if you're going to have the establishments. You are, the state law does provide you with some guidance and some things that are gonna be mandatory in state law. You do have control over sign restrictions, time, place, and manner restrictions, and you can issue a violation provision, and you can set up an annual fee, not more than $5,000 per establishment to defray administration and enforcement costs. So you do have both options. You can go down the road of a prohibitive ordinance, which would say no to all 6 types of operations, or you can go down accepting the operations and regulating the operations. There are some other state law restrictions on, they have to be 1,000 feet away from pre-existing public or private schools. They can't be located in areas that are zoned exclusively for residential use. So the state law has some requirements that are already mandated. You can be more restrictive if need be. The state has 1 year from today to develop and implement and accept applications for these types of facilities. So they have a little bit of work. They have to implement rules. They have to implement procedures for how people can apply to have these facilities, what the criteria will be, and so on. There is some indication that those who qualify to have medical-related marijuana facilities will have some preference in establishing these types of facilities. So the state still has 1 year. When the state has 1 year, my experience would say they'll take the whole year. So probably by early November of 2019, as we're heading towards December 6th of 2019, we'll begin to get more information with respect to what the state is going to do on these license and application fees. I do not recommend that you wait that long to take action or to begin action here. I agree with one of the comments. If you're going to allow the facilities, then let's get out ahead of it and start looking and exploring the types of regulations that would fit this community. If the will of the city commission on behalf of the people is to prohibit, then I recommend that you follow the draft ordinance provisions that have already been distributed, and I've already converted those into your format. and just notify the state that we're not going to be in the business of having these facilities in Marine City. So we do probably need to put this on the agenda for recurring meetings. I can work with Elaine on that. I think we're gonna get more information as we cross over into the new year and the new legislature gets seated. There's some indications already that there's gonna be a few tweaks in the law. So right now, there are 6 types of facilities. You have the absolute right to enact a prohibitive ordinance, which would end the discussion. You have the absolute right to go down a road and using the state criteria to begin to formulate your time, place, manner, signage, and you can actually regulate the number of these facilities and the location and whatnot. The one thing you cannot do is you cannot prohibit the transporting of these materials through your community. That would be a violation of the state law because it impacts the commerce flow of those materials. It's pretty much where we're at right now. There's no action required this evening, but I think you have to really begin to take some thought on this, and we need to get some direction as to how you want to proceed.
I actually had about an hour conversation with Lansing about it. I called Dan Lowers about it. And of course, he was definitely not a proponent for it, and I go, it was so poorly written. I mean,
It rolled out poorly too.
oh, and then the tax rate on it, so it's terrible. I mean, the money that we're gonna get back is so minuscule compared to what communities in Colorado and Washington have already received. We are the cheapest dumping spot for marijuana in the country.
Well, we.
Right, that was a real
we
good,
did some-
interesting.
We did some, and it's good that you would have, and the public would have some perspective on what we're talking about here in terms of money and the perceived gold mine.
Yeah,
Elaine can
in
talk
some of
about-
the sessions that I've attended with MML, they have discussed some of the preliminary numbers that the state has put out there for estimates about how much would be collected for taxes, and obviously how that would all be split up between the different levels of government. Looking at the numbers and then basing that on some of the application levels that they've had now, the number that I'm working down to is about 25,000 per facility in a community. Obviously, that's all estimates, so we really don't know at this point. And then there's the additional up to 5,000 that the community would be able to establish for an administrative fee to cover any type of applications, inspections, increased police enforcement. So that's obviously something that is not a hard number, but we have to work with the estimates that we have. So just to give you a little bit of perspective based on numbers that are out there right now, would be about 25,000 revenue per facility.
So I think the first pivotal decision the city commission has to analyze, struggle with, and take action on would be, which road are you thinking is good for the city of Marine City? A prohibitive ordinance and just end the discussion, or begin to look at mechanisms and controls to allow these facilities and to be out ahead of how and where and the time and manner and place in which they will be located. So I think that is the first directional decision that the city commission is gonna have to make, and I suggest that you make that sooner than later. There's certainly no statutory deadline right now, but the state would like to hear as early as you can if you're gonna be a prohibitive community. And as you heard from the audience, which I think is correct, many communities are already going down the let's prohibit these road. Other communities are sending these matters to their planning commission to develop locations, time and manner, regulations for these facilities.
Because as it's written, it's not very restrictive on where you can sell this and where you can't.
That's correct.
And it doesn't even have near the restrictions that alcohol has.
That's correct. The thing that I found most disturbing in the scheme in general, and we're trying to get an answer on this, is whether or not you could, out of the 6, say, I just want to allow 4, or I just want to allow 2. It's unclear whether you can prohibit just some and regulate the others. And we're trying to get an answer on that. I hope to have that answer for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
I wish I could be more defined. I think you talked to the state, so you didn't get a lot of definition either.
No.
Right.
No.
So,
Just his suggestion was to prohibit it, and I go, how can I prohibit one
Well-
business over another?
well, let me offer one comment on that, because I think you're gonna have to think about this. If you did a prohibitive action, you can repeal it and let them in later. If you can't do it in reverse.
Right.
Once
Once they're in.
you can't go to a prohibitive ordinance. And I think what some people are thinking is, well, let's just prohibit them, let the state figure out what's going on, let's get some ideas, and then maybe we'll repeal the prohibition later.
Once we have
That's what I think.
structure
That's what I think some people are thinking.
and zoning set up
Right.
for them.
That's what I think some people are thinking. All right, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else have any more questions on it?
If we take no action on it, that's what they're requiring now, either no action or action?
No, in order to be prohibitive, you have to take action. In order to regulate, you have to take action. There's no room in this in this state statute scheme to do nothing. You need to go down one road or the other.
But it's not a permanent road. You can be prohibitive now and set up your zoning and your
Have we
Your
heard anything
infrastructure
from the
for it.
federal government on what their action is? Because theirs is illegal right now.
The federal government has not changed the law. And as the law enforcement, I think, raised, the problem with the banks is they're federally insured. And to the extent they're FDIC, they will not accept that money into the bank. So that's why these facilities end up cash heavy.
And then Colorado's actually established a state savings and loan.
Correct.
Which is backed by the state instead of backed,
It's not federally.
like our savings and loan in Michigan are backed by
Correct.
the federal savings
Yeah,
and loan.
the bank that was discussed that's being established in Colorado is not federally insured. I don't know if I would put my money in a bank that doesn't have that protection.
Well, I went to a meeting, we had a meeting with the state coming down and stuff at the building level. And they kind of just said that they've gone out to Colorado. There is the largest grower out there, has a huge building, but half of it is vegetables. The other half is marijuana growing, and it does make money, but the owner's afraid that the feds can come in anytime and shut the whole works down, and he ends up with an empty building.
Federal law has not changed. As we sit here this evening, the marijuana remains a controlled substance under federal law.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. First is the tax pool, or the taxes that we would get. Are they lumped into some big pool at the state level and distributed out equally? Or is it you basically get the portion of what you collect in your city and that's it?
You want to take this, or me too? Okay, so the state tax is pooled at the state level, and the initial amount of money that they get, they split up and allocate to veterans' health, roads, schools, And then that leaves about 15% that's allocated to municipalities, and that's all based upon how many of the facilities that you have in your community. So it's all percentage based.
So the communities that get dense with these are going to do better than if you just allowed one storefront. You're not gonna get a large share
Yeah.
of revenue.
Then my next question is who is responsible for policing and auditing these facilities to make sure they're not selling under the table, things of that nature? Is that the
Policing-
state, or is that
policing
on us?
Policing is our problem.
Well, the plants and the revenues and everything itself would be the state. So they have a very controlled system whereby each plant, really from seed to harvest and sale, is gonna have an ID number that will be tracked.
Right, but the law enforcement, any
the
increase
local
in
level
law
for the local
enforcement,
building.
you have to absorb, you have to absorb that.
Yeah,
So
and
we
that-
don't have to worry about going in and auditing?
No.
Correct.
It's gonna be a headache.
You will have very little regulatory authority over the operation itself beyond the zoning that you're allowed to impose upon it in terms of time, manner, place, signage, distances from residential and schools, and general location. The operations are gonna be 100% monitored and controlled by the state through the licensing and regulatory division. However, any increase in patrol and/or local law enforcement requirements that arise, that over time, you bear those expenses.
And then there was another issue with the cash business, as in it's a wonderful place to clean money through some of the operations, and it's been looked at through even through some of the medical side of it already, because some of those organizations are much ahead of us at selling,
You're describing money laundering.
yes.
Yes, you used the nice word clean.
Yeah, I know.
Very good, Mr. Mayor. You're correct.
And because it's been found in Colorado and Washington,
Right.
because there's so much cash being changed hands at this time without having more bank regulation.
And then the folks who have to monitor and carry the cash will, I'm sure, be armed.
Mhm.
And there's a couple trickling effects that you need to consider carefully.
Another question is, since we do not have a state credit union per se, at this time, I'm assuming all these people are gonna come in and pay their property taxes in cash. So are we as a city prepared to receive large amounts of cash, which then makes the city offices a target?
My understanding is Mary Ellen will take any form of.
Well, I'll take the payment, but are we secure?
No, we're not. No, we're not. But I do know you very rarely refuse
Yeah, we don't refuse.
tax payment.
No.
But you're correct, we would have a cash issue. So you are allowed to limit the number of these facilities, but I haven't found any support that you can limit the type. You can't pluck out the types.
Yes, Lisa.
I know we're talking about all these facilities and stuff, but another thing I think, are we looking at, since the law went into effect, what are we doing with our employee policies and procedures?
Go ahead.
So for police and DPW, they have very strict standards, no tolerance policy.
Yeah, you're still allowed to test.
But they're still talking, the problem with the testing is it stays in the system so long it might not. So now they said they have to come up with standards on what the level is to determine. So they said that's another thing that we're all gonna have to be dealing with. Even though we have a policy, it's the testing. You know, it can stay in a person's system for 30 days, but maybe not affect them. So now they gotta try to figure out, just like alcohol, what's your level of, and that's gonna affect us too.
Yeah, I've had conversations with the police chief and DPW about that, and there are certain standards, and that's something that the state is still working that
Still
back
working on
out
it.
with their testing.
Yeah, and it's not just, it's all employees. It's not just the two departments, it's
Nothing
everybody
has
that we got.
changed with the rights of an employer to screen and test.
Yeah.
The other thing that's a nuance is landlords can lawfully prohibit the consumption, growing of marijuana in their rental properties.
Now, is that something we have to do anything with our rental thing that we just did? Okay, just asking, because I know that came up with somebody that talked to me about one of their rentals.
But the landlord has the right to
Landlord can prohibit it.
prohibit it.
Right.
Okay.
And there's lots of other nuances. There's, you can grow plants, can't be in plain view, there's a lot of other restrictions that are in the law. So.
We're not taking any action on this tonight. Okay.
Can we really, all right, with our limits, could we say we don't want it on Water Street, like one of the people that spoke suggested?
That's something that could be addressed through zoning.
Yeah,
Okay, Annie.
time, place, and manner. We do have authority.
Anyone else have any more?
We'll keep you posted.
Yes. And I'm gonna keep making my phone calls.
Yeah.
See what I find out.
Good luck.
Circles I walked at that day. Anyway, anyone else have any more questions or concerns on it? All right, thank you. Moving on to non-union lump sum payment.
This is something that was discussed when I had my employee evaluation, that the non-union staff has been lagging behind in the raises in relation to the union employees. I did put together a table and summarize the amounts that the Teamsters and POAM have received. What we're looking for is, in essence, at this point, a lump sum payment that's equivalent to 2% of the wages for the non-union employees. In essence, what this is similar to a cost of living increase. Obviously, it's not really an increase for their wages, so it's just a one-time lump sum payment.
Any questions?
Not questions, just comments. I know I talked to you earlier today about how you evaluate this, and you said you don't do evaluations to determine, it's just everybody gets a flat rate, and I have concerns with that, because I know in the company I work for, if you were salaried, you had to go through an evaluation, you had to prove your worth, you had to do whatever to get the thing, because otherwise, if everybody just gets the same thing, then you have one person, if they worked harder, said, well, geez, I'm getting the same thing as this person, yet I do more work, and so, I don't know. I know this is just a lump sum, so this won't affect benefits or retirements or any of that on there. But it's kind of hard in some cases. I agree with some, and then I disagree with others. So it makes it difficult.
Anyone else?
Social Security came up with a 2.5 increase?
I don't know.
I got that letter in the mail today, so.
So, do we have a motion on, to do or not to do?
Sure. I make a motion to accept the non-union employee lump sum payment. It's a 2% payment, as presented.
I'll second.
My only comment is they haven't received what other departments have, and it's 2% compared to cost of living in some places. It's 1.5% a year for some communities and some businesses, and up to 2% a year, and they haven't received it since
Well,
they had the 1% in 2017.
and they got a 2% in 16. And so did the union in that one, and then the
Right.
police union got one later on. So they're really not that far off from what everybody else has been getting, technically.
Any other questions or concerns on it? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Vandenbosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Nope.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next we're moving on to a scheduling question. Do we want to cancel December 20th or the January 3rd meeting, as normally we cancel the first January 3rd meeting?
Right, normally we cancel it with the timing of the holidays and everything. I was asked if we would potentially consider canceling December 20th. Obviously, it's your decision as a whole. The impact that this would have for the office is, first and foremost, the next item, the city commission vacancy. If we cancel the January 3rd meeting and have the December 20th meeting with timing, we would have to have applications due in by next week, or at the very latest, if you guys are agreeable to it, by that meeting on December 20th, acknowledging the fact that it would not give you an opportunity to review any resumes, but we could get it as late as possible. Canceling the January 3rd meeting like we usually do, with the days that fall with New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, generally, everyone is going to be back to work on Wednesday and Thursday. We would have to get the packets out December 20th so that you would actually have more time than usual to be able to review those packets. So those are kind of the options that we're looking at for those two meetings.
Does it still fall within the 60 days if you go to the January 3rd?
Yes.
Because we have to appoint
Yeah.
within the 60 days.
So one of those two meetings, we would have to do it. It's just if you cancel the 20th meeting, it gives people a lot more time and opportunity to put together the application and any resume. We do have two in already for the commission position. So that's something for you guys to consider. As I said, if you canceled the January 3rd meeting and had the 20th, normally we like to have the applications and resumes in for the packets when we send them out, which they would in essence be due next Wednesday. But if you were willing to waive that and allow people to put applications in up until the day of the meeting, that's an option as well.
Yes, Lisa.
I'd rather go with December 20th so that we can get this going. We got a lot of stuff to go on next
Canceling or
year.
keeping?
Keeping, and sticking with canceling our January 3rd like we normally do, and allowing anybody that wants to put in a thing up to the 20th. I don't think that's that big of a deal. You could always scan them, send them,
Or even make it the Wednesday, end of business
or the day
Wednesday.
before,
Yeah,
or the 19th.
yeah,
And then that way you can always scan and email them to us or whatever, so we still
if
have
there's any
something.
that come in.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not like you're gonna have a
There might be one or two.
busting your door down for this job.
Well, hopefully, maybe there is.
Well, it'd be nice,
know.
but it doesn't usually
As I
happen.
said, we have already received
I don't know if
two.
I'll be back from Florida on the 3rd.
All right, so I would like to get it done and over with too myself, so if anybody has any, let's work on canceling the 3rd of January, if anybody else has any. Everybody else good with it?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
So then we're going with the 20th and canceling the 3rd?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then, back to that, we have a board vacancy in the city commission. We need, we have to fill one seat. It meets the first and third Thursdays of the month at 7 PM. Interested candidates should submit the following to the city clerk on or before in the business December 19th. Board application and a resume is optional. Okay, got that done. Moving on to financial business. Disbursements, including payroll for $232,635.86. Can I get a motion to approve?
Sure. I make a motion to accept the disbursements, including payroll, for the amount of $232,635.86.
Support?
Motion support. Any questions on it? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Mayor Vanderwaal?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, moving on to city manager's report.
The meetings that I've attended since our last notice is ZBA. I also held a department head meeting. We have finalized our reports and submitted them to the state for the revenue sharing. I also attended an interesting meeting up in Port Huron regarding potential funding for trails. The Community Foundation is working with a consultant called Public Sector Consultants on an economic impact analysis, and the EDA is working with, the county is working with Smith Group on a gap analysis for the paths and trails. There is going to be a couple of public hearings or public meetings up at the county. One is, actually, they're both December 11th. One is 11:30 to 1:30 at the Dodge Auditorium up in Port Huron, the St. Clair County Administration Building. And in the evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Sperry's second floor dinner house in downtown Port Huron. They are seeking public input regarding the trails, biking, walking in the community. Also, we have put together our flyer for the First Impressions Tourism grant presentation regarding that grant that we received several months ago. This will be the January 31st from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at the Washington Life Center. It is a free event, however, registration is required. This is done through MSU Extension. We will provide much more information about that on our website and also push information out on Facebook as well. That's pretty much all I have.
Anybody got any questions for the city manager?
Next year, can we do something about all the missing decorations along Parker that got moved downtown? Because it looks pretty pathetic along there for Christmas.
The missing decorations?
Well, we used to have all the anchor and the snowflake ones all along here, and there's like, what, one or two that I saw, and that's basically it, and,
You talking about the LED ones?
yeah. Those used to be all down here, and now there's like one or two, and it's pretty pitiful. So, and I noticed we didn't put the ones on the bridge, apparently those got hung up downtown. There used to be one on each side of the fifth bridge. Those are not there this year, so that didn't get decorated either, and so I noticed a lot of stuff kind of missing or whatever, but I hope we could correct some of that maybe for next year so it doesn't look so bad.
I'll talk to DPW about that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? All right, moving on to commissioner privilege. Mr. Clausen.
Oh, well, the Rotary sponsored a run last weekend and had about 60 to 80 people in it. It was a nice run, and it was surprising that the two first ones that came in were women, then a guy, and then another woman. So they were really huffing it. So I just want everybody to enjoy the upcoming holiday and watch yourself driving. Thank you.
Yeah, I really have nothing other than, enjoy the holidays and family and everything else that you do around the holidays as we get closer to them. We seem like we start them right before Thanksgiving, and we keep going right through January 1, so enjoy.
Okay, so the unofficial count of the Joe Dog sale, in case anybody was interested, was 6,120. That's unofficial. So it was down from last year, but still a hefty lot of hot dogs. So I'll reiterate what Rosalie did again. The old newsboys will be out hawking papers tomorrow from dawn to dusk, all day Friday, half day on Saturday, dawn to noon. Please watch out for them. We'll be at the intersections. They will be wearing vests, but please pay attention and don't run any of us over. So that would be nice. Again, GARS's fundraiser will be 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. That's helps out the Old Newsboys, local families in need, and the St. Clair County Child Abuse and Neglect Council. They donate to all three. And then the Hauser Home are having theirs from 6 to 9. You can donate a new toy, canned food, or cash. They will have Santa there. You can visit Santa. And proceeds go to Helping Hands and the Old Newsboys. So all that's coming this weekend. So please help everybody out. It's a good group. We have, I think we did a little over 300 kids last year. So it helps these families, providing something for these kids. We give them clothes, toys, some fruit, we give them shoes. So we give them a lot of things, and we try to provide for them to make sure that they all have a Christmas. Thank you.
I would just like to remind people regarding the recreational marijuana. The federal government still considers it a level 1 narcotic. Therefore, if you have a security clearance, if you have a job with the federal government or a government contractor, if you work in a industry such as my employees, where you're in transportation, where the federal government regulates you, do not use it. If you get popped, you will probably lose your job. I know for my captains, anything in your system triggers automatic suspension revocation for your license. So just be aware, just because the state says it's okay doesn't mean the feds say it's okay. And if you have one of those jobs with the federal government or in a transportation sensitive industry, you still have to abide by the federal guidelines no matter what the state says. So that's it.
Okay, and same with the fire and EMS. We're prohibited from using, and it's just common sense for us. But I wasn't for or against, and I still don't know what to do. That's my opinion on it. I think I'm hoping everybody's careful with it, because some of the new edibles and the new cultured marijuana is much stronger than back in the, I don't want to date anybody, but the 60s or the 70s. It's much more effective, and got to be careful with it. And they say there's no ill effects. If you take too much of anything, even food, it's not good for you. And so I just hope everybody's careful with it, and it's used for recreation instead of, a habit forming. And let's hopefully we can get some more information and put together a concise package instead of just saying no or yes without putting any forethought into it. And I think tonight was just to talk about it, and that's why we weren't going to take action tonight, and look and see what the new legislature does with regulations. And it's $5,000. We looked into growing it. It's $5,000 a license. And right now, you won't see it at Van Bosch Farms. How's that? Everybody, can I get a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.